Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. Everybody, I want you to continue to share and like the show. Go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We're streaming there right now. Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, and then go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. And please like and share. It's a joy to be with you today. Anyone, I know I say this a lot, but anyone who thought this was going to be an unexciting campaign season, boy, uh, all you have to do is blink. It's almost like Chicago weather. Blink, it's spring. Blink, it's summer. Blink, blink, blink. And here we are. We're trying to figure out. Now there's a debate raging as to whether the president is going to remain on the ticket. And now you're seeing sharp divisions. There are different camps that are pulling for him to be on the ticket or not be on the ticket. And then the question is, if he's not on the ticket, then who? And many people are saying, well, wait a minute, shouldn't it be Kamala Harris? She's the vice president. Some people are saying, absolutely not. We need to have a blitz primary. And the people who are driving this are the billionaires. So it's the great thing about this moment is that you're finding out who really runs these private institutions called parties. We keep thinking, at least that was my naivete when I was a child, that the Republican and the Democratic parties were government entities. No, they're corporations who are governed by their boards of directors, who are called the DNC and the RNC, their national committees. And now, because the billionaires are upset, and because, quite frankly, the corporate media have been in a conspiracy of silence, because this is not about President Biden's age. This has been about whether he's well enough. Age is going to catch up with everybody. Nobody cares about age. The most popular elected official in the United States is an old man, an elder, who had a heart attack when he was running for president. Remember Bernie Sanders? We want him to run again for office. That's not it. But the question is, how can you do this? How does one do this when uh, how is this democratic? And then in the next hour, we're going to be talking with Ron Silverstein about this horrific undercounting of the deaths in Gaza. They have it up to 38,000. And if you notice, there is no more counting every day on television. Well, Ralph Nader sounded an alarm just a few weeks ago. He said, he highlighted a study that said about 200,000 people have been killed. And now the Lancet Medical Journal has confirmed that 186,000 people at least, they say, have been killed in this conflict by the IDF. And we have mass starvation. They haven't even included that. I mean, it's just, there's a lot going on. And so we're going to be talking about those numbers, but let's talk about this too. So let's start with, I'm so glad that you're with us, my beloved Alex Nelson from If Not Now. It's a joy to have you with us today. Young activist that you are, these young Jewish activists, and you're a young woman activist, and you're just really fighting for liberty, justice, and freedom for everybody, everywhere. But Dr. Ron Daniels is someone who's laid the groundwork for you. One of the most brilliant academics, and what we love about Dr. Daniels is that he has always wanted to take his tremendous intellectual and academic heft into the community. He could have taught at any university in the world, but he went to CUNY, City University of New York, because he knows that genius is everywhere, and he's been willing to mine it. When Reverend Jackson ran for president, of course, they're iconic runs now, but guess what? The establishment pushed back against him in 84 and 88. And so the people who ran with him, because he didn't run alone, they were like the outsiders, the outlaws. He's one of those persons who said, no, you got to run, and I'm going to help you do it. And he was the deputy campaign manager. And he founded the Institute of the Black World, and he ended up running for president himself under the Peace and Freedom Party in 1992. Dr. Ron Daniels. So when he speaks, we all listen. And he said, look, he believes that Joe Biden is a decent, caring human being. And he's convinced, you write, that it is time to express our gratitude to him for his exemplary service and respectfully ask him to step aside. It's time to rally around Vice President Kamala Harris to lead the Democratic Party and this nation to victory over Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ron Daniels.
Well, it's great to be with you.
Always a joy. What do you assert in this piece and why did you do it now?
Well, I think we have to start with the beginning, and that is, first of all, I've been a staunch proponent for President Biden. Quite frankly, I think surprisingly, he has amassed the most impressive legislative record on social, economic, and racial issues since Lyndon Baines Johnson. And I was shocked, frankly, that he did that because he's been historically more center, right, center. He's been in the center, so to speak. So,
And the right, we can't be reluctant to
yeah,
say
yeah.
that.
So I,
That's been our pushback against him, but that's all right.
it's fine. But I'm saying that I have to give credit where credit is due. He's done an amazing job, quite frankly, and I think that's because of the chemistry of the party. I think progressives pushing him and interacting with him has been good. And let me just say, I don't think we would be here if he had kept his word that he would be kind of a generational figure that was going to share the torch. He was going to pass the torch, if you recall, after this election to Kamala Harris. Well, there was a certain sense of being indispensable. So he decided he was the only one who could defeat Trump. And so, but the problem has been, and I've been strong in supporting him. In fact, I've been strong trying to get Black people to be more enthusiastic about him because the Democrats have done a terrible job translating what it is that he's done. And so I've been on the record doing that. And I did a piece and I just shared with you this morning talking about the age issue, which I think is ridiculous. It has nothing to do. It's about competence. It's about vision. It's about integrity. It's about capability. It has nothing to do with age, except that that which is superfluous and cosmetic, frankly, matters in the minds of a lot of people. But the key problem was the race has been deadlocked. And so the Biden campaign made the decision that they wanted to shake up the race. They were going to hurl him into a debate. He was going to jump into this debate, and that was going to break the deadlock. Well, unfortunately, it turned out to be a disaster because it didn't break the deadlock. I mean, I was horrified. I was in the nation of Grenada watching it live there and excited to see it happen. And within a few minutes, I said, oh my God, what is going on here? Because not only did it reveal the fact that he had a bad night, it also did seem to reveal some cognitive issues that we had not previously been aware of. And so the question became, then it did not shake up the race. And so my position is, and it is the case that we need to deal with the existential threat of what I call him the Orange Man, aka Agent Orange, then we need the best person to do that. And to me, that meant that we should rally around Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris, is able, capable. She is not only a Black woman, she's Asian, Pacific, and Caribbean. She's been on the forefront of dealing with the issue of reproductive rights. Even in her defense of Biden, she was brilliant, strong, capable, able. And I just think that Black women have led the charge, and they're leading the charge now, by the way, in helping to rescue Biden. I just believe that if Kamala Harris were at the head of the ticket, she would electrify not only women, she would electrify a lot of those younger voters. Because one of my critiques about Biden, I've still supported him, is he has not emphatically come out for HR 40, even though the HR 40 Commission polling has shown would help with younger voters out there.
Now,
So
HR 40 is?
HR 40 is the bill that Congressman John Conyers for many years put forth to create a commission to study and develop reparations proposal, now being led by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and has tremendous support. Reparations as an issue has tremendous support around the country. And of course, the issue has become Black voters, the polls have said Black voters have been lukewarm, which to me is astounding that it's lukewarm. And then younger voters have particularly not been that impressed. So it seemed to me that Kamala Harris solves that problem of really, really firing up the black base and then firing up what I call a rainbow wave of voters that can really, really not only minimally beat Trump and the MAGA movement, decisively defeat it. So that's my case. That's what why I wrote the article. However, I mean, we'll see how it all how it all shakes out, because at the end of the day, if in fact it is the consensus of the leadership of Black America and others that we have to stick with Biden, I'm going to fight like hell for Biden. I just don't think he offers us the best opportunity to really defeat Donald Trump at this moment.
Well, let me ask you this, because I think that, I go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and having gone to Howard and having had two brothers in Congress, one of whom is there now, being a Howard, I'm in Washington a lot, and you kind of, and being in media, you have your feelers. This has been an open secret, his cognitive difficulties, and anyone who's seen him over the past few years, you've seen it. I guess one of the things that, for me, Dr. Daniels, is this: you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, you remember, you were there when Reverend Jackson famously said, Alex Nelson, in 1984, at his convention speech on July 17, 1984, he said, "I'd rather have Roosevelt in a wheelchair than Reagan on a horse," who had cognitive issues too, by the way, that the press hid. And of course, John Kennedy was very, very sick. I mean, his father, who was a very wealthy man, famously put life-saving medicines in major cities and hamlets all across the country, so that if his son fell ill, they could get the medicines quickly, right? So, I mean, and FDR, uh, for a depressed nation, economically and spiritually depressed, he would not let us see him. Of course, I wasn't born then, but he wouldn't let us see him in a wheelchair. And I mean, the thing is, if he's struggling with some issues, okay, so what? But I'm trying to. So there's
Oh,
that,
I
Dr.
don't have
Dan.
a problem. It's not me. You don't have to convince me. That's not
Yeah,
the issue. You don't
no,
have to convince me. And by the way, the comparison to Roosevelt is not quite a good one. He was an eloquent, powerful orator, by the way.
absolutely.
All right.
And
And
but I'm saying, we have. You remember Walter Jackson, the great singer. My parents said the big hiccup in his career, one of the greatest voices you will not hear, was that he had suffered from polio. So he was in braces. And we were a looks driven society. I'm not trying to convince you, Dr. Daniels. I would never presume to do that. I'm just saying that, I think that they're off the mark, and I don't want us to be off the mark,
yeah,
because the thing is,
well,
you know,
and what I think is happening, by the way, because the question is, how do you fire up the base to win the election? That's the only objective. I mean, that's what we're here to talk
Mhm.
about. I mean, I have no problem. I mean, I've written extensively over and over again about my support for Biden and trying to get the Democrat party to articulate better, all those things. I've been on the front lines in that regard.
Of
So,
course.
so the question becomes, even having said that, the race has been deadlocked. It is frozen. It's and by the way, inexplicably to me, defections on the part of some black voters. I think the polls are way off. It's not going to be 15, 20% of black voters who are going to desert Biden and all that. It's not going to happen. But it doesn't take 15 to 20%. It only takes 3 or 4%. As we saw in the 2016 election with Hillary Clinton, a small dip in Wisconsin and those states made the difference. And so the black base becomes very, very, very important, as do a range of other voters. So if age is an issue, it's irrelevant whether I think age is an issue. It has been an issue in the minds of the American public. He had the opportunity to disabuse people of that issue in the debate. He didn't. He failed miserably on that particular. And
Well,
since that time, he has also been in his interview with George Stephanopoulos. He was
mhm.
asked, did he see had he seen the review? Had he reviewed the debate? He couldn't even remember whether he did it or not.
Well, see, to me, that's not age; it's his health. But even with that, how are they going to, in the name of democracy, leapfrog past Kamala Harris? I mean, that, for
Well,
me,
they
is
can't. Well, they can't leapfrog past Kamala Harris. That's the point. They couldn't. They can't leapfrog beyond Kamala Harris. She becomes the logical person to prosecute the case, and I think she would do it brilliantly, capably, and ably. And quite frankly, I have to say this: if Biden had been magnanimous and served his first term and did what he said he would do, Kamala would be in the forefront. There is
Mhm.
a way in which, unfortunately, men and their testosterone and their egos get in the way. And now it becomes like, I am the only one, he's saying, who can defeat Trump. I don't believe that. And so it's now become a question of his indispensable, him being indispensable. Having said all of that, one of the things I am seeing is we don't like injustice. A lot of people don't like injustice. So what's happening is there's a kind of saying, well, hey, we're not just going to throw him out. Like you said, we're not just going to throw him out. We're not just going to kick him to the side. And so
Mhm.
now what you're beginning to have, even among Black women voters, the Congressional Black Caucus, and a number of forces, people are pushing back saying, we're going to stick with Biden because we don't like people to we don't like an injustice. Now, to me, if that does what we need in order to fire up the base across the board to win, then so be it. But the bottom line was the election was frozen. It did not, his debate performance did not shake up the race in the way that he had anticipated. And even now, it's still frozen. So we got to roll up our sleeves. We got a hell of a job in front of us. I think Kamala Harris would be the logical person to, in fact, electrify the base and move forward. If that does not happen, we still face the same challenge. And I'm going to be all in fighting to defeat the orange man, AKA Agent Orange.
Well, if they do push back against Kamala Harris, how will that play out with the voters? I mean, because the fact is, I'm living in Chicago, Dr. Daniels, and we're dealing with the migrant issue. I'm not going to call it a crisis, um, and it has Black voters in particular very angry with Brandon Johnson and with everybody. Not angry with these poor people who've been dropped in the Black community, the poorest Black communities, by the way. But they're saying, wait a minute, they're getting resources that we did not get. So you're seeing that. I'm talking to young people, not just in Chicago, but all over the country, young Black people, young Black men in particular, who without blinking, when I ask them, what do you see for with this election? Many of them are moving to Trump. They are. I'm not saying it's 20%, but I'm not saying it's not. I'm hearing a lot of it. Excuse me, I'm hearing a lot of it. What can be done? And I think that if I'm wondering, what do you think would be the effect of this? They're talking about the Blitz primary, the billionaire donors and the 100 millionaire donors are driving this, Dr. Daniels. They're like, well, we're going to come up with a Blitz primary and we're going to have Barack Obama and Oprah Winfrey and some of these leading lights have these events and we're going to have vote that way. How's that going to work?
Well, I don't think it will work. I mean that and it can work. I mean, to me, that's why I made my case. My case
Hmm.
is rally around Kamala Harris. That's the only logical choice, and it's not a weak choice. This is a strong choice as
Hmm.
far as I'm concerned. Now, it may not happen. People may disagree, and certainly as it stands right now, Black leadership is coming together in a united front, uniting behind Biden. That's what's happening at this point. And in
Hmm.
fact, Black women are taking the lead again, saying we're going to stick with Biden. And if they stick with, if I will go with my community on that. In terms of that, I still hold the position that at the end of the day, our anger and our frustration around this issue should not blind us to the fact that the polls are still frozen, that
Hmm.
there are still a significant number of people in the, say, dare I say, the broader community, the white community and so forth, as I'm listening, who really wanted to go with Biden. They have been shaken by what they saw. And whether I like it or not, that's a reality. And I think a small dip there will have to be offset by a tremendous turnout by Black and brown people, people of color, women, whatever. And it can be done. But again, every now, unfortunately, and I don't like this, but he's going to be scrutinized. And so if there's another blunder here and there and whatever, it's going to be magnified and it's going to be exploded and the media is going to be all over it. And the question is, will our anger and will our resistance to that be enough to overcome the forces of the Orange Man, aka Agent
Well,
Orange.
I don't call him Orange Man, and I'll tell you why.
And let me make this final point here,
Okay, of course.
because here's the real danger. I
Mhm.
mean, who would believe that this race with Biden, I don't care what his condition is. Before the debate, I did a little piece said there is no debate. It's a debate if between two old persons. It's not a debate because it's a debate between decency and indecency, democracy and autocracy, all kinds of things.
Mhm.
Who would believe that we're talking about an election that is essentially a dead heat? That means that there are literally millions and millions of people in this country who are buying into this MAGA mad white nationalism, grievance, being against LGBTQ plus I people. I mean, so that's the real threat. And so we can't take this lightly in terms of who is the best candidate, because that's what we're up against.
Well, before you go, I wanted to bring Alex Nelson in because if not now, and many young people have been pushing back against President Biden over Gaza and a lot of other disappointments, quite frankly. And but as I've spoken to people, the fact that you now, I mean, one of the things that I appreciate about this time, Dr. Daniels and Alex Nelson, is that we're really seeing how the party politics is run. I mean, you're really seeing, yeah, I vote, but who really controls this thing? If the wealthiest in the party, the funders of this corporation get upset, they can throw my votes out. I mean, this is just, and I'm glad everybody can see that now. But where are you in this moment? And as you talk to other young people, I mean, you're not representing everybody, but I'm just saying I'd like to pick your brain a bit.
So by and large, I think Dr. Daniels' assessment is pretty spectacularly spot on. I think that of the three big names that have been talked about, obviously Donald Trump is not somebody that, me or anybody that I organize with or am in close community with is in support of. So then when you're talking about the other side of the ticket, who would I prefer to be the president-elect when I wake up on the morning, Wednesday, November 6th of 2024, between President Joe Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris? I would be much more excited if it was President-elect Kamala Harris. I think that would be an incredible step forward for us. And I think that as a candidate, she would completely galvanize young voters. As I've said, I've talked to a lot of people on the doors and on the phones for down ballot candidates, specifically around Illinois, but a little bit around the country. And I'll be doing a little bit more work around the country later on this summer. And again, the most galvanizing issue at the doors, by and large, is abortion. And Vice President Kamala Harris can speak about abortion in a way that we have just never had from a serious presidential candidate. And I think it would just completely energize and charge the Democratic base and the Democratic Party. I think the way she can speak about the Black maternal health crisis that this country is facing, I think would be incredibly galvanizing to Black women, which is, of course, the core of the Democratic base. And then, she can speak to the immigrant experience. She can just speak to a lot of different experiences. And I think she just is much more plugged in. And we know that we've talked about this before, Santita, but she's created some distance between where she stands on Gaza and where President Biden stands on Gaza. She was the first really central, primary figure from the administration to call for a ceasefire, the first to step away from the, towing Biden's line. She's spoken, she's not as far left on this issue as I am. I'm, free Palestine. She's not going to say that, but she has talked about the humanity of the people in Gaza. She's talked about empathy she feels for the protesters and what they're advocating for and fighting for. My biggest concern is that I just simply don't see it happening. I saw a lot of reporting coming out yesterday afternoon and evening, basically the phrasing being the dam is holding, Biden won't step down. And I think it's to his detriment and our detriment, because I just think that I don't necessarily think that his debate performance and the critiques would have stuck had people been so truly thrilled with his performance up until now. I agree with Dr. Daniels that his domestic legislative record is pretty impressive. But unfortunately, he's now got 8-9 months of a genocide behind him. in which we've had reporting in which he specifically as an individual is the one that is so firm in his commitment to supporting Israel and Netanyahu's fascist hold over Israel. And I think you can't have both. I think you can't have that debate performance and a genocide. And so I think it's the two things combined that have really done him in. And unfortunately, it sounds like he's digging in, and President Biden is just refusing to step down. I think it is to the detriment of his own personal legacy. I think if he were to step aside and had made space for an open primary or made space for Vice President Harris earlier on, boy, I think what that would have said about his legacy and who he is as a person really would have gone down well. But unfortunately, I just think we're not there, and it's pretty upsetting to me.
Well, Dr. Daniels?
Can I make one final point to that? Because I have to. I'm sure at my age, I have to make notes to make sure I don't forget things. I used to be able to just reel it out spontaneously.
He's an academic. That's why he makes those. Get out of here.
But it's also down ballot we have to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's not just the presidency that's now at stake. What's at risk now? A reason why a lot of these House members are nervous and so forth is that there is a fear that instead of recapturing the House and perhaps holding the Senate, that you could lose it all. The presidency, the House, the Senate, and the whole 9 yards. That's the other issue that's really at stake, that you really want to have a strong candidate at front that will electrify the base. And therefore, because what I'm hoping for is that Democrats take the House, hold on to the Senate, which is harder, but is possible, because you got people like Tester and all those coming out. They're nervous because they want to hang on. If we got all three, then we can. And by the way, this is constructive criticism. I want a playing field where we can go at Biden, we can go at the Democrats to push them to move forward in a much more progressive way, because there's a lot more that can be done. A lot has been done, but a lot more can be done in terms of moving it forward. So we'll see how it all plays out. I still believe it's hashtag rally around Kamala, but if it doesn't come to that, I'm still in. I'm going to do everything I can to defeat the orange man.
How can we get it? Well, I don't call him the orange man. And I only say that because I grew up with a father in public life. And part of the reason my brother had to be sent away to boarding school at the age of 10 or 11, and that was a very painful choice my parents made. It was painful for us to see my brother Jesse go. It's because he was named Jesse Jackson Jr. in Chicago. And our father was not the iconic figure he is today. And he still has people, he has his detractors, but he had haters, people who absolutely hated him then. And it made our lives quite precarious. And so I just, I want to keep the issues where they are, which is one of the things that you've taught me, Dr. Daniels. Let's keep the issues where they are. And the question is, what kind of country do you want? And Dr. Daniels, no one has fought harder to make a just and free society than you. And to acknowledge the contributions in particular of Black people, and the Institute for this Black century, in this 21st century, the Black world in this 21st century. I mean, so much of what America is about is driven by Black people. Memorial Day, created by Black people. They had just thrown white soldiers into the graves. Black newly freed Americans dug them up and said, no, we're not going to do that. I mean, the 4th of July, Frederick Douglass made you have a rethink on that. And so I just want to thank you for your work and what you're doing for us in this moment by helping us to really get to the point. What are your final words? And just give us some marching orders, Dr. Daniels.
Well, I think the marching orders is to, frankly, to have this debate, have this discussion. We can't have it forever. And I mean, we got to close it out in the next couple of weeks in order to figure out what we must do. Mm-hmm. But make no mistake about it. Every period has to be examined within its own context. This is the most dangerous moment, one of the most dangerous moments we have seen in the history of the United States of America. And when democracy is in danger, all of us are in danger. All of the ethnicities, all of the aspirations of all the people are in danger. In fact, I close my piece with, we want to defeat the MAGA forces, because we still have this complicated, complex journey of creating a more perfect union. It doesn't stop. It continues, but that's a good journey. That's an important journey. And by the way, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, the campaigns of 1984 and 1988 took us a hell of a long way down that path of this more perfect union. So those are my words. That's my feeling. Let's fire up the base. Let's get it done one way or another. I just think one way is easier than another, but one way or another, we have to defeat the forces of MAGAism in this country in order to actually continue that path along towards a more perfect union.
Well, let me just say this, Reverend didn't run alone. And, people who ran with him, you took your hits too, because we stood out like sore thumbs. But I want to thank you for your leadership down through the years.
Well, thank you so much. IBW21.org, IBW21.org, and to follow what we do with the Institute of the Black World 21st Century.
Well, we'll have you back in the coming weeks so that we can see where we're going to go. I know you're going to be in Chicago for the convention, and I cannot wait to see you then.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Dr. Ron.
Nice being with you, Alex.
Nice meeting you. Nice chatting with you. And great to hear your thoughts. I think we're really in alignment. So it was really nice to share this segment with you.
Thank you, Dr. Daniels.
All right.
So here we are. I want to say hello, good morning to Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, Robert Williams, and Wanda from Miss Wanda down in North Carolina, sending you so much love. Thinking of Mr. Corey this morning, bumped into some portraits that he made of me just yesterday. Kenneth Rush, how you doing, sweetie? Virginia, how you doing? You want to know about Harris's background as a prosecutor. Will that galvanize people of any age? Wow. But no, give us your thoughts, Virginia. Give us your thoughts. Andre, how you doing? Kenneth again, Frank, and Eric, because I want to know, and Eric is out there from the left coast. I want to know what has changed in the perception of Harris in 2024 from 2019, 2020, because as you know, she and Biden had very, very well. They were candidates who were not embraced by the electorate. Let's put it right there. I mean, she didn't get to the primaries, and he labored through the primaries until Black people saved him, quite frankly. And it's very challenging to ask. So much has changed, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not as and many people are not looking at, people are not frightened by Trump anymore. That doesn't wash, particularly with young people. I've been talking to a lot of young people, and particularly young Black folks and young Black men. Absolutely, they said, you know what? I'll tell you this about Trump: no wars. And my friends are coming home, those who enlisted. And there was money flowing in the community. I hear it all the time. And you can't ignore, you can't ignore these people. Like, it's just like you can't continue to say that times are getting better when I'm going to the grocery store and I got to put stuff back. Mm-hmm. I mean, eggs, a chicken. I got to put it back because I cannot afford it. So, it's there's a lot going on here. Do you think that Kamala Harris has the strength to take us across the finish line? Or well, let me start there. Then I have another question for you. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think she's a strong enough candidate?
I think if she was the nominee, I think she would. As I said earlier, I think that she energizes the Democratic base, particularly the core, which would be Black women.
But what about white women? Would she excite white women?
I think she would too. A lot of them, because of the abortion issue, because reproductive rights are so top of mind for so many white women. And we know that is why the midterms, the 2022 midterms, did not go as expected, and there wasn't the quote unquote red wave, because the turnout from women who were adamant in protecting abortion rights and keeping abortion access in their states or in their local areas motivated and galvanized people and got them to the polls. And as I said earlier, President Biden's inability to speak plainly about abortion, the fact that he was so sort of weak when Roe versus Wade fell. A local congresswoman in Illinois, Lauren Underwood, has spoken quite a bit about how she was astonished when Roe v. Wade fell, and she saw no sort of overall plan from the Democratic Party or Democratic higher ups as to like, okay, here's how we're going to fight back on this. Roe v. Wade fell, and she said she looked around and everybody's just like, oh no. And so I think that we need a leadership who recognizes the real both potential for using that to get voters to the polls, but also understands in a real way why this is so important to people, why reproductive health care and abortion access is so galvanizing for women. And I think Kamala Harris's ability to speak plainly about abortion and really talk about that issue head on, I think would really bring a lot of people to the polls who at this moment are feeling pretty blasé about the whole thing, who just don't care, who don't see that much daylight between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. I think some of this is the fact that we sometimes get very caught up in two individual candidates, and we don't talk quite enough about the fact that you vote for an administration. So you're voting for, who do you want to be Attorney General? Who do you want to be to Secretary of the Interior? Who do you want to be Secretary of State? All of these kinds of things. So, and I think that that's just a failure of education, just a general educational failure, but also like a mainstream media failure. We talk about it in sporting contest terms. It's these two men going up against each other. And it's a lot more complex than that. But that's also the reality of the world we live in. We're not going to change that in 2.5 months or 3.5 months. So with that in mind, I just think that Kamala Harris would just be a much more exciting and powerful candidate. But like I said earlier, my understanding is that Biden administration spent the 4th of July weekend closing in the walls and in doing everything they could to ensure that President Joe Biden is the nominee come August.
Well, I've got Virginia Spatz here, who's in DC, and she has these questions. And that's why I keep pivoting back to her initial run, because I think it's important for us to look at the strengths and the frailties of both candidates. I think part of the reason that Biden struggles is because he never energized the base in the first place. He depended upon Black people. Black people pushed him in without really knowing his record. And yes, he was never a centrist. He was always on the right he was right of center. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just those are the facts. But the fear when JFK was elected was that, oh my goodness, we've got LBJ. This is no progressive. There has been no president more progressive in the modern era than LBJ. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't care why. I'm glad that he did push through voting rights at the peril of the party. He said, "No, we've lost the South for at least a generation," and the Democrats, that community, the white segregationists, never came back to the Democratic Party, and he was willing to take that hit, and for that we're grateful. But Virginia says, "What about Harris's background as a prosecutor?" Well, that galvanized, as she said, people of any age. She said she was just joining the show, so we had not gone over it. I was trying to let Dr. Daniels make his case, but Virginia, I want to hear more from you. She said, "I find the idea that Harris would be so exciting for voters does not resonate in the part of DC where you live." You said where issues around incarceration, especially Black people, are so present, because in fact, that was a pushback from the Black community on her. And these young people, you all will not forget. I mean, because I'm going to tell you, you might not like it, y'all, but I'm here to tell you, what does Dr. D. Dwight McKee say? I'm the weatherman. I'm the weather girl. I didn't bring the cloud. I'm just letting you know that the cloud and the rain, it's here. And what we have to look at is the fact that people are, that is still with her. You see what Virginia just said. She said, now, hold on, Carol Soskin-Haight out there from the hills of Beverly sending you so much love. She says, but Virginia said she does agree with you about abortion. I hear you. But she's looking at some of the, hey, Lorraine, hey, Robert, um, she's looking at those issues too. I mean, and the fact is, while she could, the vice president has no vice president has the space to confront the president because that's not what you're there for. She said, "I'm for a ceasefire." Remember, for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I think that she created some more space, and she needed more space for the administration. But I'm just wondering if just, I mean, given what Virginia has spoken to, because, you know, when you're in a campaign, all these things are brought up.
Mm-hmm.
And you do have an energized portion of the electorate who are Black, who are not in their 70s and 80s and 60s and 50s. They're younger people who are not wedded to the two-party system. Remember, the plurality are now independent. So, I mean, you have 27% Republican, 27% Democrat, but 44%, and this was just a few months ago, who are independent. And that is growing. This duopoly, people have to understand that's no longer the case. It's no longer the case. So I'm trying to find out from you, given, you know, some of the challenges that they have in their platforms and in their previous stances, particularly as we come up at the top of the hour, and we're going to talk about the real undercounting of the killings in Gaza. It's not 38,000, everybody. It's close to 200,000 people. And the Lancet Medical Study says that they expect that number to go up to 500,000. That's like 10% of the population. What, the 7.9% of the 7 to 9% of the population has been killed already. Wow. So when you've got that, Alex, I'm just wondering how you make these compelling arguments. Because I know that they're in your group with the young people. I'm putting you all. It's not just If Not Now. It's not just Jewish Voice for Peace. It's Black Lives Matter. It's young people. Mm-hmm. You all have a whole. You're like, the world that y'all have had. I don't want it, and I don't agree with you. And I'm willing to even take a hit for 4 years because I don't like this.
Yeah.
I don't like, I mean, and you know, I'm hearing that from the young people too. Mm-hmm. That's real. Or am I misreading that?
No, I don't think you're totally misreading that. As I said, I think that like the reality is people just don't see that much daylight between Biden and Trump. And, you know, as I said earlier, I don't think that's a correct read of the situation because you vote for an administration and not a person. But how I feel about things doesn't change the reality of where we are. And the reality of where we are is things are so hard for people. As you said earlier, the cost of groceries is high. You know,
rent is high.
Rent is incredibly high. We have a like sort of an unprecedented housing crisis. Trains don't run on time. Bridges are falling apart. The climate crisis continues. You know, this is set to be the hottest year on record. I think that there's a good chance that we're going to see the hottest temperatures recorded on planet Earth in Death Valley this week. Mm-hmm. So I think that the idea that like that we're just voting for the status quo and to keep things that they are is a real turnoff to people because people are not happy with the status quo. The status quo is killing people right now. And so I do think that is a big issue. But I think that in some ways is more Biden's hill to overcome than it would have been Vice President Kamala Harris's. I think her experience as a prosecutor would have potentially hurt her in open primary if she were facing some progressive governors who have legitimate governmental experience and executive office experience within their states, but maybe don't have that same background. Two names that come to mind off the top of my head are both Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who have been names that have been tossed about when people have been saying, oh, who's a possible replacement going to be? But I think that we're not talking about a robust open primary right now. The primaries, by and large, and in a good portion of the states, have happened. And Joe Biden was the presumed Democratic nominee. And so he was really the only name on the ticket.
Well, I mean, and isn't that a problem? I mean, because the time to me, it's almost like ranked choice voting.
Mhm.
The time to have hashed this out to me was during the primary season.
Yes.
So people feel that they are empowered because right now we're going from elections to selections.
Yeah.
And Americans that are not feeling that. I know you're not. You're not willing to say, I don't want to speak for you. I mean, do you want an election or do you want a selection?
Well, and so it's funny you say that because I'm in a group chat with a bunch of young activists based here in Chicago, and that is absolutely the debate we are having right now.
What did Auntie say to you? That
Auntie's right on the money.
You got to give us old folks a little bit of credit.
Yeah. I have one colleague and fellow organizer who's saying, I cannot believe I am in this chat defending Joe Biden. But unfortunately, here I am because the opportunity to replace him has passed. He never should have been the nominee. But unfortunately, he was the only person the Democratic Party ran. And, in different times, I do understand the idea of you run the incumbent. They've got the name recognition. It's a term limited position anyways. So you don't necessarily need an open primary every reelection cycle. But boy, there was a real miscalculation as to both Joe Biden's reelectability and also just what it would do to his legacy to cling on to power in this way. And I think if he had been brave enough to step away from the presidency, at the start of the calendar year or earlier and say, this isn't right for me and it's time for me to pass the torch, I think we'd be in a tremendously different position. But that's not what he did.
We're not.
And I think it's to our detriment because I really, really struggle to see President Biden defeating Donald Trump at the polls.
Why do you say that? What are you hearing?
Because I just don't think he's electrifying people. I think people view it as an exercise in futility, so they might as well stay home. That it's just not worth it. That he's certainly not worth phone banking for, door knocking for. There just isn't that sort of grassroots energy that he really needs to carry him over the finish line. So you might still have some of these. I know he had a Hollywood fundraiser a couple weeks ago where there was plenty of money. Which, okay, sure, you do need money to be president of the United States in 2024. You need to run TV ads and print ads and all of those things and digital ads. But you need more than that, too. You need a real energized grassroots base. And that is what is missing this time around. You don't have the same ambitious young people who say, like, let's roll up our sleeves and let's get to work. Let's knock these doors. Let's make these phone calls. That's not happening this time around.
Which is what you had with Bernie. I mean, and you had it with Reverend Jackson. And I've seen the Democrats over and over and over and over again. And you would have had that, I think, to an extent with Elizabeth Warren. Because, and boy, what a combination she and Bernie Sanders would have been. They both would have had to have had another kind of balancing person on a ticket. But the fact is, the Democratic establishment took them out.
Yeah.
And we're seeing I think this moment is instructive. Alex Nelson from If Not Now, Chicago, because you're seeing how the sausage is made. It's it's not cute.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because you need to become a billionaire, because if you do and you become a contributor to the party and something bothers you, all you have to do is make a phone call and you can upend the whole election.
Mm-hmm.
Now, mind you, we were shouting at the tops of our lungs months ago. We said, you need to open up the process.
Yeah.
Robert Kennedy should not be running as an independent. He should be running as a Democrat, which is what he started to do. Mm-hmm. Cornel West just said, I'm not going to even do it. Because you all make no space.
Yeah.
These people bring energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for example, Jill Stein brings energy. People, maybe Jill Stein would have stayed with the Green Party. That's fine. But I'm saying the people who bring the energy, we push them off to the side. And then you try to manufacture some energy for people. And Alex, I'm just trying to figure out how that's going to work.
Well, I don't think it is. And I think that's the problem, because it sort of feels, for those of us who are paying attention, like we're staring down the barrel of a gun right now. It's just like it's sort of ominous, sort of.
You say staring down the barrel of a gun? Yeah. That's pointed at me.
Yeah, that's the problem, is it's not It's not, these, as you said, these big name wealthy, or some of them are not big name, very intentionally, wealthy Democratic or wealthy, independent donors. But the idea is wealth. They're not the ones that will experience the most negative outcomes, regardless of how this plays out, regardless of who is the next president-elect of the United States. They get to cruise through. So it does feel unfair and crass and cruel that they ignored concerns from grassroots base and grassroots organizers who've been saying for months, we have real concerns about Joe Biden's reelectability, be that an age and cognitive ability thing, be it his foreign policy record, be it just that, hey, the things aren't going well enough for people to feel energized around him. As we've said, rent is too high, groceries are too high. We still don't have Medicare for all. He still isn't talking about abortion or the climate crisis in a way that really will resonate with young voters. So
voting rights. I mean,
right when he first came into office, one of the biggest things we heard was the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. Let's pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and really shore up, voting protections. That's one of the most important things Democrats can do to really ensure and maintain the, integrity of both the election process, which of course is, what that is going to look like should Donald Trump win is a massive question. And also it would just be good for voters to see some real forward movement on shoring up our rights, and that never happened. So,
well, I think we have to push harder. I mean, Lorraine, I hear you say we're doomed. We're not. It's always darkest before the dawn. We are now seeing how this works, everybody. Now you're seeing that with all of your votes, that the wealthy people who fund the party have the power in this private organization that is not regulated by the government. It's a private corporation, as is the Republican Party. They can come in and throw your votes out. And they can come up with we're going to talk about this tomorrow. Keep your schedule open for us in the morning, Alex. I want you back because I want to talk about this Blitz primaries tomorrow. Because I'm on my way to Las Vegas, everybody, for the free and equal debates. And it turns out that it's going to be the Freedom Fest. Cornel West will be speaking there. Opening up the debate will be Robert Kennedy. You're going to have Jill Stein. You're going to have a lot of people. I'm going to sing the national anthem coming in. But Thomas Massey is going to be one of the moderators. And I think, I'll have to find out just to confirm, but someone who's very, very big in the podcast space. And I think that we have to be mindful of what's really happening here. We really, really, I think we have to be mindful and understand that this is a teachable moment. We're not doomed. No. Now we are being informed. You're beginning to see how this works, really. Mm-hmm. That's the wealthy people, Abigail Disney, who you don't even know her name. You know her name, but you don't know her face. Mm-hmm. The man who co-owns Netflix. They are the baller shot callers in the organization, but then they want to bear down on Black people and women and all of us. If you don't vote for me, you're doomed. What? That's insulting to me. No. Clearly, this is not about me at all. So don't put this on Black people. Black people vote. Mm-hmm. But we voted at the rate of 74% 4 years ago. The numbers are down to 62%. And don't say it's because Black people are apathetic. That is not true. Black people are not apathetic. We absolutely care. Young people care. Mm-hmm. Indigenous people care. Latinos care. You're not delivering to them.
Yeah.
I don't want to see one more person killed in Gaza. Mm-hmm. You've been lying about the numbers. I want you to talk about Haiti. Haiti's just to the south of us. Mm-hmm. And you mean to tell me I got to get Kenya in there to calm things down that we have messed up? No. And you want to talk about foreign policy and you don't want to talk about Haiti? The first republic that overthrew the slave masters to become their own masters. No. You have to come again. Mm-mm. Alex, the last minute belongs to you. What do you want to say?
I want to say that I hope people, regardless of who is at the top of the ticket, do make a point to get out on election day, because there are going to be down ballot issues and down ballot candidates that will need support from everybody. So find something and someone that you care about, but also make sure to try it. We're always looking for help for folks who are willing to roll up their sleeves and do the down and dirty political work that's day in and day out, because this does not begin or end with an election, no matter who it is. We need to be constantly pushing and fighting and building our own networks and building our own power structures, because what we are facing is untenable. It is untenable for existential reasons that are beyond any individual person, again, like climate change. But they are also untenable because people have built up power structures that benefit the wealthy, that benefit those that are already in power. It's there to keep them in power. And so we need to keep pushing and pressing and building, because if they don't got us, we got us. So,
well, you know what? You'll be back in the morning, because we're going to talk about these blitz primaries. We got to talk about that. Got to talk about it, because the wealthy are coming together, and they're the ballers, the shot callers. I'm not going to go sit in a room and watch Oprah and President Obama and Michelle Obama. These people, I know, I like them. Mm-hmm. You're not going to direct the campaign for me. Are you joking? What is that? Mm-hmm. Your vote does not have more weight than you. Might have more money than me, but your vote doesn't matter more than mine.
Yep.
Stay right there. Love you, Alex Nelson. See you tomorrow morning.
All right. Thank you, Santita.
Sending you so much love. Let's talk about Gaza, the massive undercounting of the killings there. It's not 38,000. It's almost 200,000 people. The Lancet Medical Journal says the numbers will go up to 500,000. Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. Morning Stars, click the second hour link so you can get on over. Sending you so much love. Bye-bye. Thank you, girl.
Oh.